I'm here with Mikko Hypponen, Chief Research Officer of F-Secure. He's at the RSA Conference, and he just hosted a media luncheon. Mikko, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You were discussing, there's a lot of talk around cyber war. That definition is kind of murky, and you were trying to make a distinction between cyber attacks, cyber espionage, cyber war. If you can kind of explain your thoughts on that.
Almost everything gets labeled cyber war, and that's not really the right way to do it, because we eventually will end up seeing what I call real cyber war. And already when we today label things like denial of service attacks or hacking into services as cyber war, what are we going to call it then when we see a real attack where the countries are at war and use armies to attack computer systems of another country?
And that would be, I mean, we've seen certainly examples that come close to it, but we've never actually seen what you would define as cyber war, which is one country's cyber arsenal attacking another one's.
Well, for real cyber war, you would first have to have a war. We have seen cases, for example, Stuxnet is a good example. Yes, it's very important, it is groundbreaking, it is the first case of cyber sabotage, but it's hard to characterize it as a war because there's no war, and if there would be war, which countries would be fighting it?
What is the danger of pegging something as cyber war, perhaps prematurely?
Well, there are obviously groups of people who'd like to make this sound as serious and as threatening as possible already. There's lots of money at stake. Armies and defense forces around the world are researching cyber defense and, most likely, we're guessing, cyber attacks. And the more threatening the situation looks like, the more money there is to be made by private sector working with development like that.
Mm-hmm. We recently saw the hacking group Anonymous take down a security firm, HB Gary and HB Gary Federal. That's something you described today as cyber gang wars. Close, but not quite cyber war. Can you explain that we've seen quite a bit of that, of the gang warfare going on?
Yeah, I was trying to find out a way to tell the difference. So cyber war, what we saw again in Estonia 2007, what we've seen with the anonymous attacks, I wouldn't call it cyber war. Cyber gang war is much better description because it is individual groups, this hive mind that takes a life of its own, but it really isn't warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Gang war, which we see in cities around the world, is much closer definition of what we're seeing here in online world.
Okay. And you mentioned, you spent a little bit of your presentation today talking about Stuxnet, which is this very well-known malware, as you defined it, possibly the malware of the decade so far. Now, interestingly enough, Stuxnet attacked critical infrastructure systems in Iran, but what you found is that it wasn't really, it didn't look like malware. It wasn't encrypted. It didn't allow for debugging, or it allowed for debugging, I guess. So it kind of looked like a clean, normal program, right?
Yeah, there's been comments that Stuxnet wasn't as advanced as it could have been because it didn't try to anti-debug or use anti-debug features against security programs. It wasn't really obfuscated or encrypted very effectively, unlike much more complicated malware which we've seen before. And I think that this was on purpose. What Stuxnet accomplished with this is that it didn't look like malware. And most antivirus labs around the world detect most of the malware today with automation. And to automation, Stuxnet looked like some sort of an installer creating registry keys and dropping signed drivers. And through most automation systems, that would actually pass with flying colors, and it didn't get flagged because of that reason. So if you look at it from that point of view, it was a success.
And you admitted, I mean, it wasn't a wild spread, but it certainly spread, and it was a bit of a failing on some of the antivirus firms to not catch it sooner.
It is embarrassing to us in the antivirus industry that it was spreading for so long before we actually found it.
Do you anticipate another Stuxnet, forming? I mean, obviously it was sophisticated. There was a lot of money behind it, apparently. But can we see more of that down the road?
Well, I wish I could say no, but I think it will happen. We will see more attacks like this, maybe from the same source, maybe we'll see copycats. Obviously, modifying Stuxnet isn't trivial, although it's easy to find Stuxnet itself, but taking the ideas, taking just the concept that yes, you can infect PLC devices, you can affect the real world through automation devices, and these devices are everywhere, every single factory, every single power plant. The elevators in this building are running those PLC boxes, and if you can affect their operation, yes, you can affect the real world.
As you showed, a lot of critical infrastructure, missiles, a lot of the stuff is hooked up to the public internet, or at least a PC where one could inject a USB stick and infect it that way.
It's sometimes scary when you see how everything is running on computers, and in many cases running with off-the-shelf operating systems, Windows XP operating missiles. Windows NT, which is 15 years old, was in use at Deepwater Horizon, the drilling platform that exploded, which just makes you wonder.
And we'll finish with the brain virus, 25 years old. You went out and actually found the originators, the creators of this virus, and you chatted with them, and there's a video forthcoming. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's right. It is 25 years since the first PC virus, and what makes it special is that inside the virus code, in the boot sector of the floppies that it infects, there's an address. So what we did a week ago is that we actually went to Pakistan. We went to that address, and I knocked on the door. And the guys who wrote Brain opened the door, so they are still there. 25 years later, they're still at the same place, and we did a short interview with the guys for historic purposes, and we'll be posting it to YouTube in a week or two.
I'm looking forward to it. Are they still up to technically no good, or what are they?
No. These guys are not criminals. They're nowadays successful businessmen running an internet operator.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to checking out that video. That'll post on YouTube?
Yes, post on YouTube, and you'll get the update from my Twitter feed. I'll
Excellent.
See you there.
Mikko Hypponen, the Chief Research Officer of F-Secure. Enjoy the rest of your RSA conference. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.